And Miss Fanning was the prettiest teacher in the school.
Big tits Fanning, yes. Mrs. Fanning, she had very big tits, which mystified all us boys.
She was a Dolly Parton of the day, you know, because she really had immense breasts, and you know, these guys, we're what, 13?
And horny.
And oh yeah, our hormones are raging wildly, and that was very tough being in her class.
There were signs all over the place. Look at Fanning's tits.
It was like the Indian drums, from the Cherokees to the Apaches, to the Arapaho, on the drums. She's got the big tits. She's got the big tits.
And I went around looking for her room because they had windows in the front door, so that somebody could check what's going on inside. And I used to go around looking to see if I could find Fanning and her tits.
Big tits Fanning. She was one of our favorites.
Oh, well, we had the tough teachers like Mrs. Hockney.
Hockney, yeah, she was a toughie.
Mrs. Hockney in first grade scared the hell out of me.
She developed the chin hold, and she used to bang your head up against when you did something wrong, bang your head up against the blackboard.
I mean, you heard your teeth clacking.
Your teeth?
Very dramatic.
It was dramatic then, boy. That was dramatic.
She used to give you a pinch on the cheek till your cheek got red.
She would get your tie and smack you against the blackboard that way. That was more violent. You are not listening to me. And your head would smack against the blackboard. And you know what the worst part was? Your tie, the knot would get so tight, you couldn't take the tie off at night. So you had to cut it.
And of course, the teacher that I had was V.V. Carter, and that's an interesting story because she didn't like me. I was the president of the class, and I liked to fool around and make noises. I would say, Mrs. Carter, we have to, and we'll do it later, but we have to, and she didn't like that. I don't blame her. Now, when I look back, I was silly and goofy. I was silly and goofy, and she was right. So when we graduated public school, you would go around with your autograph book, and I had made up with Herb Rostand. Was it Herb? Yeah, Herb Rostand, Albie Cooperman. We had made up, we're going to do a plot, because I knew Mrs. Carter wouldn't sign my autograph book. So I knock on the door, I come in, and I said, Mrs. Carter, would you please sign my autograph book? She says, Herman, I will never sign your autograph book. She was very angry. She didn't like me. And now when I look back, she had every right. I was a pain in the ass. And she said, no, please get out. I said, Mrs. Carter, I got a weak heart. I'm 14 years old, 13. I got a weak heart. You have to give me your signature in my autograph book. She said, no, I will not give it to you. I says, you gotta go. And I collapsed. And Albie Cooperman came in. What's this? He's had a heart attack. Sheriff! Herbie Rostand came in and he says, Mrs. Carter, you're under arrest for the murder of Herman Shiner. And she started to scream and they all ran out. This is a true story. You ask Rusty.
Well, I had the most wonderful kindergarten teacher, and to this day, she still is in my mind. I remember her like it was yesterday. Her name was Patton, Miss Patton.
I was totally in love with Miss Patton. And
How many people here were in love with Miss Patton?
Really? I see her face in front of me now. She was beautiful. I was 5 years old. Miss Patton was 25 years old, and she was beautiful, and I knew she was beautiful. And it reached the point that I used to pat her on the rear end.
Uh-oh.
I used to pat a tushy.
George gets it in his head, he pats her on the behind. And Mrs. Patton, I saw it. Mrs. Patton said, George, what are you doing? And George laughed. He liked to laugh. He said, nothing.
But I patted her tushy a couple of times, and she said, you shouldn't do that. And I said, I know. And I patted it again. And she said, if you do that once more, I'm going to call your mother to school.
A week or two later, Jack, George pats Mrs. Patton on behind. They called George's mother to come to school.
And my mother, came to school, and then she sat me down. She said, that's totally inappropriate to do that. I said, but her name was Miss Patton, Mama. I thought it would be okay to pat her. That was my lame excuse. And I didn't do it again after that, but I still have great memories of her. And Miss Patton, you may be out there, and you could reach me. It's listed, Shapiro West and Associates in Beverly Hills, and give me a call. I'd love to get together with you. I have a feeling you're still around. You had this great vibrancy and a beautiful ass.